Morning Date. Welcome to another edition of Morning Date, and in this segment we get to sit down and chat with some outstanding figures from all fields, all walks of life, and today we have the great pleasure of sitting down and getting to know more about Tyler Rasch. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah.
Rasch?
Rasch, yeah.
Rasch, I'm sorry. Rasch, who, of course, is a renowned TV personality and the vice president and co-founder of the American International Student Association. Welcome to the studio, Tyler.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Now, I know that a lot of people probably recognize you or would recognize you from a very popular TV show these days. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
So I'm on a TV show on JTBC called 비정상회담, or Non-Summit, or well, they also call it Abnormal Summit, I guess. It's a TV show with a bunch of people from a bunch of different countries who talk about what's various social or cultural issues and how that goes on in their country. And it's sort of a comedy kind of show. So it's hard to explain. But yeah, so that's the TV show, and I'm representing the United States on that.
Yeah, now the show has become very, very popular. Lots of people watching it. And I just wonder, did you kind of expect to become sort of this famous and for the show to become this popular?
Absolutely not. I had no clue. And I had no intention whatsoever to be in the television industry in the first place. So I had no idea that I had no idea what I was getting into, and I didn't know how big it was going to hit. And none of the other people who were planning the program either really knew how much viewers would like the program from the beginning. They weren't expecting such a large, well-taken response.
Okay, so how did you end up on the show in the first place?
It was actually an accident. There's a website here for international students. I'm an international student here. I'm studying my MA.
Where are you studying?
I'm studying in Seoul National University, and I'm getting my MA in International Relations. And there's a website for international students here when they're looking for part-time work, because as you know, for students, sometimes financial things are difficult. So
Sure.
I was having a particularly difficult time financially, and like basically eating pancakes for like a week, just taking flour and mixing it with water and eating that for a week. And I really needed to find a quick job. And so I went to this website, and they said something like JTBC is looking for international students. And all they put on there was that, and they wanted your resume. And so I was like, okay, well, I really need a job. So I sent my resume, and they called and asked for an interview. And I went to the interview, and I was pretty shocked because there were like 12 of them there, 12 people working for JTBC interviewing me, one person, and that was the first time I've ever had a 1 to 12 interview in my life. And then they were like, "Oh, well, it's a TV program, and we're gonna, do all of this stuff." And I had imagined the TV program would just be a seasonal thing, like because in the United States we just do one season and then we cut and then we have a break and then you do another season, and that's how things go.
Yeah,
but here it's just you start and then you don't stop until
the show gets canceled.
So it's just been going and going, and I had no idea that it would be this well taken.
So what has it been like for you? I mean, now I'm sure when you go outside, people probably recognize you.
Yeah.
Do you get swamped by throngs of people wanting your autograph, that sort of thing?
I definitely don't get swamped. If I'm in a group with the other people from the TV show, then sometimes we can get swamped because multiple people get recognized and everybody has a different fan base, but then it gets all added together. And so that sometimes it gets swamped in that situation. But when I'm by myself, I don't really get swamped. Many people do recognize me. And I think a lot of people feel comfortable asking me for a photo or just having a conversation with me. There's been a lot of situations where people don't actually ask for photos and they just say, "Hey, you're that guy, right? Yeah, I watched the show, I liked when you said this, and what do you think about this topic?" And they just start a conversation with you, which I think is different than some of the other members on the TV show.
Okay, so going from the point where you were eating pancakes every day to now being sort of a recognizable person? Is your life different? I mean, have things changed for you?
It's very, very different. I think it's easiest to describe the change in terms of space. Because people recognize who you are, the types of things that you can do in different places change, and that really changes your lifestyle pattern. And as a student, I used to love studying in cafes. I hated studying in the library. I need that kind of white noise around me in order to really be concentrating. Mm-hmm. And so I used to go to, really just big cafes near those big four-way intersections that everybody goes to on the second floor, and it's like totally full at lunchtime, like that kind of spot.
Yeah.
But now that's not really possible, because when I go there, people will interrupt me when I study and talk to me, and so that kind of thing is no longer possible. And that's just a small example, right? So if you want to have conversations, very private conversations that you would normally have with your friends over lunch or dinner, those can only be had in either at your house, or if you're in a room, or if you're in a restaurant that's so loud that nobody can hear you when they're sitting next to you. That kind of, so these things that you have to pay more and more attention to where the line between your personal space and public space is. And that line has gotten pushed way far back towards me. So personal space has decreased a lot. And that, if there's been anything difficult in terms of the process of being a regular, normal student, and then all of a sudden being exposed to everybody over television, it's been that change in personal space, I think.
Yeah, I think that can be a little bit difficult, especially when people recognize you can't go doing weird stuff and running around naked in the streets or anything like that.
This is true, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we're going to take a break here. We're again here with Tyler Rasch and talking about his life and experiences here in Korea. Now, I understand that you sang on the show.
Oh. I did. I briefly, yes.
And what song did you sing? That I guess was very popular.
We sang and danced to Pharrell Williams' "Happy."
All right, so we're going to take a listen to the song right now, the original version.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We'll come back and talk some more. So here's Pharrell Williams with "Happy." All right, that was Pharrell Williams with "Happy," and you're listening to Morning Special here on Thursday. We are in the middle of our morning date with our very special guest, Tyler Rasch, who, of course, everyone knows from 비정상회담. And we were talking about the program itself. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit. And obviously, on the program, you speak Korean, right?
Yes.
Now, this is your first time speaking English nationwide broadcasting, right?
Correct.
So
forgive me if I make some mistakes.
Well, I'm sure it must be comfortable for you.
It's comfortable, but also I find that for some reason I'm less comfortable with English at some points. It's like, how do I relay that? So, but.
Yeah, well, I understand because when you're used to doing something in a certain language and then you do it in a different one,
correct,
it can be a little bit awkward.
Really, truly.
Well, you're doing a great job so
Thank
far.
you.
Your English is really good.
Thank you.
Now, I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, they watch the show and they wonder, how do these people speak Korean so well? How did you master the Korean language and why did you start learning it?
Well, I started learning it because, first of all, I've always loved learning foreign languages. And I had spent a long time learning European-based languages. But instead of doing that and continually finding the same cultural or political roots, I wanted to do something that had a different global perspective. So I wound up talking to a close friend of mine who has a similar cultural background as I do. Her mom is from Germany and her dad is from the United States. My dad is from Austria. My mom is from the United States. So she was like, yeah, I'm learning Chinese. You should learn something completely different. And so that was summer. And so I went to a Borders bookstore and I looked for like a language book. And the only books that actually had the writing system for those languages were Turkish and Korean. Mm-hmm. And so I chose the Korean one, fooled around with it for the summer by myself, figured I really liked the way that it tasted and decided to try to take a class. And since then, it really stuck. So the reason why I chose that language is because it provided a different perspective for me. And I think the reason why I stuck with it is because it always provided that new perspective. And in terms of mastering the language, I don't think I've mastered the language myself. But I think that the process of learning it and the way that I've learned it in order to get to where I am now has been a very strong process of forcing myself into environments where I can always be using Korean, whether that be changing the settings on my computer so that they be in Korean, or avoiding English speakers while I'm living in South Korea, or if I'm watching a drama or a movie, not using subtitles, like forcing oneself to learn through inference rather than learning through translation, I think is a huge difference and really helps to advance the learner more quickly.
I absolutely agree. And I think that that's a mistake that people make when they're supposedly trying to learn a language, whether it's here in Korea and people are trying to learn Korean, or people in another country going to learn English, is that they'll surround themselves with other Korean speakers when they're trying to learn English, which is, comfortable, but just completely antithetical to what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Now, I have heard that not only do you speak English and Korean, but you speak a handful of other languages.
I've studied a handful of other languages. I studied French since I was 7, and I grew up in Vermont, which is right next to Quebec.
Yes.
And so we learn lots of French compared to Spanish. And so I studied French until college, and I did French literature and everything. So French is relatively what used to be much more comfortable than Korean, but my Korean is now more comfortable than my French is. And I also learned some Portuguese and Spanish. And because of similarities with French, that was not too difficult.
Yeah.
And then I learned some German because my dad's from Austria, and I always heard some kind of Saturi kind of dialect German when I was little in my house. But I never really learned anything in this sort of correct way. So I tried to take a class once, and then so I learned a little bit of German, but I can't speak very much. And some people think that I speak Japanese or Chinese, but my Japanese skills are pretty much reading skills. I can read documents in Japanese, particularly for research, because I've studied a lot of Hanja, and because I've learned the basic writing system, and it's very similar grammatically with Korean, so it's easy to read. And for Chinese, I would love to learn more, but I've never taken a class or learned appropriately.
Well, still, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. So, as a student of languages, could you give our listeners a tip or two on how to be a better speaker in a different language, how to go about studying or learning a different language?
I think probably some of the most important things is almost has to do with your attitude more to do with your attitude towards learning the language rather than specific things that you can do. So, for example, if you're the kind of person who really needs to know exactly what a specific word means, and you need to know all the definitions of that word, and you want to make sure that you know really 100% what you're doing with every single step of the way, you're going to be very slow, and you're never really going to get there. And the reason why is because language is incredibly complex. And you have to be able to say, okay, I'm learning this sort of in passing. I've only got 30% of this word. I sort of know what it feels like. I don't really know what it means. I kind of understand the context. You have to be able to say in that situation, okay, I'm okay with this 30%. I don't need to pull out a dictionary. I'll remember this 30%. And when I run into this word later, maybe I'll add another 10% and I'll be at 40%. And next time I run in another 10%. And then eventually you'll get to 100. I think it's this kind of patience with words and this allowing oneself to only be satisfied with the fact that you're only getting parts of it and not be frustrated with that. And actually, that's a very good sign of learning, is that you're getting parts of things.
Yeah.
So A is accept that. And I think B would be sort of force yourself to have more exposure.
Yeah.
And force yourself to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, and use your language. Like if you have resources like radio, then you can listen to radio like this one, or you can go online and you can find online radio, or you can watch YouTube videos, or you can watch foreign films. I don't know. You can do all of this, but you can choose to do that without subtitles, and you can choose to do that, and then you can think about it to yourself in your head, trying to use your target language, or you can talk to yourself in the shower. You can do all sorts of things, and I think it's important to increase your amount of exposure to the language, whether that be through listening or reading or writing or whatever, through all venues if that's possible. And then to allow yourself to make mistakes and not know if you're using the 30% of the word right, but still trying to use the 30% of the word. I think that kind of attitude is very important. And so people really need to figure out how to get on that track.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that's very good advice. We need to start wrapping things up here really quickly. What are your plans for the future? Are you going to continue on with TV? Are you going to go back to concentrate on your studies? Of course, you can continue those.
Well, that's relatively easy to wrap up. I have no clue. I think for TV is the kind of thing where if they give you an opportunity, you can choose to take it or not. But if they don't give you an opportunity, then you can't do it anymore. So I think that will probably make decisions for itself. And then in terms of academics, I'm still trying to finish school now. So once I finish school, I think that will open a lot of opportunities. And to be frank, there are just so many things, so many options that are available, whether they be back in the States or here in South Korea or going to China or Singapore or Malaysia or Japan. There are so many things that can be done with an MA in IR and Korean and English skills that I have no idea what I want to do.
All right. So the last question is this one. Usually when people stay in Korea, I find that people who last past the first 6 months or a year, if they last, they're kind of like they're in. Korea becomes part of them.
Yeah, yes.
What is one thing that you can't live without? What one Korean thing? Maybe it could be a food thing or some convenience or something that only you find in Korea. One thing that you can't go without.
Okay. I don't know if this is a weird answer to the question, but well, first of all, obviously the people I've met here is something that I don't want to live without. But other than that kind of answer, really like Korean bathrooms, I really love having a bathroom where you can take a shower with this, like the drain in the middle of the room and just like not really care about how
where
you're showering.
the water
Do you know
goes.
What I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's just, I love that design of a bathroom in my house. And so I know if I go back to the US, I'm going to have to shower in this like thing with a curtain and it's like,
a tub.
I love tubs, but like, I mean, when I shower, it's nice to just have this whole room is my shower now. Like, I really like that. And so I think I would miss that a lot.
And it makes the whole room easier to clean.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, boom, you all say. Right?
All right. That's a great answer, actually. I've been thinking that myself recently. All right. Well, unfortunately, it is time for us to wrap things up. Thank you very much for joining us once again. Would you like to have a parting comment for our listeners?
Thank you for having me, and it's been great to have an opportunity to talk to everybody in English. I don't get very many opportunities to talk to people in my native language. This is clearly a really fun show, so I hope you all continue listening. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. I hope our listeners enjoyed it.